Hello and welcome to Danger Aware Animation Department. I am G. Ray Howell. I am the Chief Information Officer and currently the main animator. And today we're going to continue working on our Super Aware Kid. This is part 4, Basic Rigging. So here we are. We've got our character ready to go pretty much. I did come across a couple of things I need to correct before we do the rigging, and basically that's with the hands. If you look close, I've got the fingers in reverse order. So I need to go into the hands here, and we're going to just move the thumb and the forefinger. Holding shift, I can select all of these and I'm just going to move them to the top. Oh, I missed one, the nail for the forefinger. So we'll bring that up. And the nail. And the thumb needs to be on very top. And then we want the pinky finger last. So we get the 4 items for the pinky finger. And the middle finger should be between the middle finger, or the mid finger should be between the ring finger and the forefinger. There we go. So now, 4 fingers first, then the mid finger, and the ring finger, and then finally the pinky. So we need to do that on the other hand as well. So we'll get to the back hand. So the pinky goes all the way to the bottom. Go up the palm. And hit the forefinger. And then to the top. And then to the top of that. And then the ring finger. So stand up. And now we get our So there we go. So now we can begin rigging the character. Now, when I rig a character, I like to set a main bone for moving the character within the layer. Now, you don't often want to do that because when you start with your character in the center, if you need to rotate the layer, it's going to rotate based on where your origin point is. As you can see on the character here, it's in the upper left by his head, her head, its head. But what we want to do is set that origin to the center of the character so that when we're on the character and we want to rotate the layer the character is on, it's going to rotate the center of the character. So we're just going to go to the solar plexus there. And now when we rotate the character, it rotates on that center point. Now, if we begin moving the character around within its layer, then we change how that layer box is shaped and where the origin is. So we no longer rotate on the center of the character, will rotate on the center of the layer. So it's hard to explain, but let's go ahead and start setting up the bones. So the whole point of that is I start with a bone that is near the feet, that if we need to move the character within its layer, we can do so simply by pulling this bone at the feet level and then moving the character within the layer. So my first bone is going to go there, but I want to see my grid in order to set my bones. And for setting bones, I like to change the project settings to 720. It just gives me a better layout for setting my pin bones and all the other bones. So we're going to add our first bone, which is going to be the one that will move the character within the frame, and we want to use the grid so that we're creating our character controls nearby the character and consistently. So we're going to start with our pin bone there. for the character to orient on, so should we need to move it. So the next bone we want to add is for the base of the shirt here, and we want it to go for where the shirt will rotate. And since we want to keep the shirt at the hips, we're going to start our first bone here. Now you can see that we're not in the center of the characters. Generally, I like to keep my character centered, so let's go ahead and center our origin right in the center of this grid. And we're going to go into our grid settings. So we go to grid settings here and change it from 20 to 10 so that we can center on the center of the character there. So let's move in and we'll get our origin set exactly in the center. Now we can add our bones, and we want to choose that first bone to make sure we're adding from there. And so now we're going to add, A for add, and we're going to put this first bone that will rotate the bottom of the shirt, and then the next one will rotate the upper part of the chest, and that'll take us to the shoulder area. And then we're going to have 2 neck bones, so each one of them will only be 2 to 3 long. The first one 2, the second one 3, and the second one we want to end right in the center of the mouth. And then the last one will be the skull. And then we go back to the chest bone here by hitting B for bone and selecting this bone, and then we're going to add our shoulder bones. And again, we use B to select the center bone, and then A to add the other bone. So we're going out to the shoulders here, and then from there we want to go to the upper arm, to the elbow. And again, on the other side, we choose that B for bone, A to add, and we come down to the elbow. Then the next one will go to the wrist. And again, you must select the bone that you're linking from before you add, and then add the wrist bone. So you can see we're a little bit off over here on this side. We can adjust for that as we go after we've got the basic layout. So then we want the hips. And because this character can be both male or female, depending on what we're using it for, we're going to have the hips be able to be moved more like either male or female. So we need hips. We can't just stick leg bones out there. We could, but this gives us more control. So then the next bone would be down to the knee, and then B for bone to select this side, and A, and then go down to the knee. And then the next one would go down to the ankle, and finally the foot. So bone here, A to add, we go to the ankle. Again, it doesn't have to be exactly centered to the part yet. We're just getting the basic layout of the character set up. So now the most complex part of rigging this character is going to be the hands. We really can't use the grid because our hands don't occupy entire grid shots, and we don't want to change the grid to the degree we would need to set those bones on the grid. So we're going to go ahead and turn the grid off now, and the rest of the bones we're just going to set manually. So and we can go in now and adjust these that are slightly off. So we want this to be in the center of the elbow there, and I don't believe it is. Let's go ahead and look at our character's forearm. So we got a forearm. So we can see that our bone needs to end about right where these dots are. So we need to go back to the bones. We'll use pants. And we're just going to create a circle here. And we want to use shift to make it an exact circle. and T, and we're going to drag it to be in the exact right place. Let's use Alt and shrink it down to a point. There we go. Now we have something we can shoot for with our bone to make sure it's at the right spot. So we're going to go to the bone layer, grab this bone, and stretch it and point it to that exact point. Then we're going to pick up this bone and bring it down to connect there. So now we've got our perfect rotation, and we need to do the same thing here on this wrist. So what we're going to do is move that bone point that we made, forearm here. So we're going to go G to grab and grab that. So we're just going to move this to the center of the wrist bone. So we're going to use Alt and expand it till we're matching the exact circle. That way we're in the absolute center. And let's see here, a little wider. So there's our circle. So now we use Alt and we shrink it to a point. Let's go ahead and go to the bone layer, grab this bone, and now we can easily center it. And now go back and get rid of that point, and G to grab, and then to delete. So now we can add, we're going to go back to the bone layer and hit A to add for bone, and now we draw our palm bone. And we'll just end it about there. Then we're going to need one for rotating the base of the thumb. And for that, we want to see the base of the thumb. So we need to go into that hand. So we are on the left part of the body. So there, we're at the left hand. So let's hide the palm. There we go. So now we can see the base of the thumb there. Let's hide the thumb tip. So all we're seeing now is the thumb base. And the center of that rotation is approximately right here. Let's go ahead and draw a new circle and find the exact center there. So we want to be about the same size as the rotational. Hit T and put it in place. And so now we know the center is right there. Let's shrink this to a point. Let's, oh, I know what we can do. We can change the width on this one. There we go. So now we've got our point. So we go back to the bone layer. And we're going to create the new bone. So we're going to add, but we want to make sure we're on the palm bone, which we are. So this bone is the palm bone. We're going to add for the thumb, starting right in the center. And then we're going to go to where the center of that rotation is. So now we go back to the thumb. It should be nice if Moho created the ability to put circles in place so that we could be exacting without it having to be added to a layer. So let's go back to the bone layer. This bone is a little off. We want it to be exact because the closer we are to the center of the true rotational, the more smooth our thumb will work. So there we go. So now we can go into the thumb and take this point. We're going to move it. Whoops. We're going to move it. I hit T. And we're going to move it over here. And we're going to expand it using Alt. Keep it as a perfect circle. And we're going to match this rotational here. So a little bit bigger. So we want to get right in the center of that rotational. So there's where our center point should be. So shrink it down. There we go. Now we go to the bone layer. We grab this, and we're going to bring that point to exactly where we need it. And so now we can add another bone. So we can turn back on the thumb tip, and we're going to add the bone for that. So A to add, and bring it to the midsection of the tip of the thumb. Alright, so now we're going to do the bone for the forefinger. Let's turn off everything, all the other fingers for the moment. We'll turn them on one at a time as we rig them. So we only want the forefinger on for the moment. So now we're going to choose the palm bone again. So hit B to grab the palm bone, and then A to add, and we're going to go to from the base of this finger to the joint here, from there to the next joint, and there to the tip. So we're creating all three bones for the joints here. Now we do need to assign all these bones to each part, but I'll save that for last and just go through it each part again. So now we can turn off the forefinger and turn on the mid finger, and now we're going to choose the palm bone again and add, and we're going to add to the center of the joint here, center of the joint here, and to the tip of the finger. And if we make the bone a little bit longer, it's easier to recognize which finger we're working with. So don't be afraid to make the bones different sizes on the body parts. So now we're going to turn on the ring finger and go back to the base bone here, then A to add, and just go from the base of where this finger rotates to its center of its joint, center of its joint, and about mid-tip finger. Turn that one off and turn on the whoops, wrong way, turn on the pinky finger, and we go back to the palm with B to grab the palm bone, and then A to add each bone to the joint of the finger. And this way we don't see all the other parts and don't get confused as to what we're working on. And so there is our hand. So now we need to do the exact same thing on the other side. So we're going to turn these back on. And we grab the bone layer, make sure we're in the bone layer, and then B for bone to grab the palm bone, then A to add, and we're going to add each of these bones here. Now I'm not being very careful placing these bones on the fingers yet. We will fine tune them afterwards. Go ahead and do the eyebrows. So we're going to go B for bone, grab the forehead here, and now we're going to add the eyebrows. Now the eyebrows, we want to do them where we can adjust them up and down, where this part is more flexible than this. So when we add, we're going to start at the back of the eyebrow and come to the center, and then create another one to the front. Then we're going to grab the center head here again, and B will bring the brow from the base to the center, or a little more than center, and then the front. And we don't need to wiggle his ears or his nose, and his, her. Now we can turn all the hand parts back on. So we've created the bones, but they're not yet attached to the body parts. With Moho, there's two ways to use bones. You can use them with a strength value, or you can assign them to layers or points. So there's multiple ways actually. So if we tried to move the bones right now, it will move the character, but it moves much more than we want, and it doesn't do it in a manner that we're happy with. Now we can adjust that with bone strength. We can reduce the strength of each bone so that it only affects a smaller area, but even so, it's still pretty distortive, and it's not the method I prefer to use for animating, especially when we're dealing with vector drawings. When you draw vector drawings and you break everything up into their own layers like this, it makes rigging the bones very functional. Not easy. I can't say it's easy. It's just more functional. So we're going to go to the bone layer, and we're going to choose the bone strength, and we're going to select all the bones. So every bone in the entire character, and we're going to then choose bone strength and simply reduce them all to 0 so that they no longer affect anything at all. So if we move the character's bones now, only the bones are moving. But you can see that the bones are moving as they should. They're connected to each other, and they're rotating just like a true bones might if they were free-flowing. So we can basically restrict these free flows by putting in constraints on the bones. And for instance, like the shoulder should never move that much. So we can grab both of these shoulder bones and choose B for bone, and then shift to grab 2 of them or more, and then we're going to put constraints, and we're going to only allow these bones to move about 10% or 10 degrees up or 10 degrees down. So 20-degree range of motion. So now if we manipulate the bone, it can only go so far, so that we're restricting how much distortion will happen. So now with all these bones unassigned or unaffecting the drawing, what we want to do is assign them all to different parts of the body. Now you can see here I've got the hip bones wrong. I did not parent them to the proper bone, which is here. So B to grab a bone, P to change its parent, and then parent it to the right bone. So now with that parented properly, I can move the arm, and the legs don't move unless I want them to. Now these hip bones should also be constrained just as the shoulders are. So let's go ahead and we're going to grab the shoulder bone first, and then holding shift grab the hip bones, and then go to constraints, and if you can see, it's got the constraints from the first bone I selected. So I can now close, and now that same constraint has been applied to all those bones. So now these bones will only move so far before you have to affect the legs instead of the hip. And as you can see, the body rotates all at once from here, and as I mentioned, we can pick up and move the character or the bone structure around within the layer, but that doesn't that's not the best way to do it. So we're going to put everything back. Now we're going to start assigning these bones to different parts of the body. And I just realized I didn't add any bones for the hair, and we're definitely going to want to do that. So let's go back to the head bone and hit B, and we're going to add a pin bone where it doesn't actually have the ability to be rotated itself. So we're going to go to the bone layer, hit A to add, and we're going to put one right here, and hit that bone again in the center and add again, and put one over here, and I'll show you what those are for later. And then we're going to come down here, and we're going to add a pin bone here that is related to this one, and go back to this base bone or this bone, and add another pin bone here. And then we're going to add a bone for flow of this lock of hair, a bone for this lock of hair, a bone for the flow of this lock of hair, and a bone for the flow of this lock of hair. And I think that should do it over there. And then over here, we're going to grab this bone and add just 1, 2 bones for the hair. And basically I just did that wrong because I should have selected each of these individually to parent to that bone. And the same with over here, these 2 bones should be parenting to this bone. And all the pin bones are going back to the skull bone. So now we can start setting everything up. We want to go back to selecting all the bones and reducing the strength to 0. So we don't want any strength on any of the bones on the body anywhere. So now we're going to start adding, oops, we got strength on these 2 bones. There we go. So now we're going to start rigging the character to each part. So here we've got the top front hair. We're going to assign it to be linked to this bone right here. Front hair lock lower, so that's over here. We're going to put it to this bone. Number 4, we're going to put to this bone. Well, that was number 2. Number 4, go to that one. 3 to that one. Oh, I've got 2 of 4 and 2 of 3. That's the problem. Okay, so go to this one. That one. And that one. Let's give that a look and see. We can manipulate each bone now and see how it affects that strands of hair there. So that looks good to me. I think that'll work. So those are all based off of this bone. So if we affect this bone, all those bones are affected. Okay. So now we're going to go over here and we're going to go to the head. We don't want to assign the entire head because we're going to be doing individual parts. So here we go to the right brow, and we've got 2 bones in the brow, so we're going to go B for bone, and then I to assign points to be affected by that bone. So it'll be the base 3 points will be bound, then B for bone, and then I, and only the tip point will be affected by this bone. And if we test that out, we can see that we can raise the eyebrow, crunch it in, bring it down, scowl, all kinds of effects with the eyebrow there. So going to the other brow, we're going to do the same thing. We hit B for bone, choose I to select these 3 points, and bind those points. B for bone, select the main tip bone here, I to grab the single point, and then bind that point to that bone. Then we're going to move to the nose. We're going to bind the nose by layer. So we don't want to do the points. We're going to go the whole layer to the head bone. Okay. And the left eye also to the head bone. And the right eye also to the head bone. So that as the head bone moves, so do these parts. And finally, we're going to put the mouth on the head bone as well. And so now the right ear to the head bone, the skull to the head bone, and the left ear to the head bone. And so now if we test that, everything on the head should be moving, but we didn't get the back of the hair yet. That's down at the bottom, so we'll get that later. But as you can see, all the parts that are on the face are moving together with the head bone. And so there we go. Now we're going to move to the sleeves. So we want the right sleeve by layer to be affected, well, yeah, by this arm bone. And we want the left sleeve to be affected by this arm bone. The shoulders, which is this whole section, we're going to do by points. So we choose B for bone, and then I for points, sorry. So we're going to grab these points and bind those to that shoulder. Same with the other side. We go B for bone, then I for points, and then all of these points will be bound to that shoulder. Now we've got to do one more special thing here, and that is choose the chest bone here and bind the point right in the center and at the bottom to that bone. And so now we can test all of that. We can move the upper part of the body. We can move the arm for the sleeve, the arm for the other sleeve, and the shoulders can move up and down, but the neck and the other shoulder is not affected by the one we're moving. So now we're going to move to the next is the neck. The neck we're going to do by points. So we're going to choose the bone at the base of the neck, and we're going to choose I, and we're just going to bind the very bottom point. Then we're going to choose the bone at the top of the neck and I, and then we're going to bind those 3 points for the neck, top to the top neck bone. And that gives us the ability to move the neck in a very functional way and be very flexible. So we can do all kinds of proper things with the neck. So next part is the back top of hair, which is up here. We're going to bind that by layer. So we want to bind the layer to this bone. The hair behind head on the right, so the right hand side of the hair, we're going to bind to this bone. And the left side of the hair, we're going to bind to this bone. Now we've got the bottom part of the shirt. That is going to be bound by layer to this bone. So the whole layer is affected by that bone. And then we've got the forearm patch, and you do need to attach the patch to a bone so that it will move with that bone. Then we go to the biceps. They're attached to this bone. The forearm is attached to this bone. So the thumb tip by layer gets assigned to this bone. The thumb base by layer to this bone. And we're just going to do each finger to the correct bone one at a time. Now, so far I have not named any of these bones, but I will be naming them. It's very hard to work with them if you don't actually name them for what they actually are. So we will be going in and naming all the bones as well. Whoops, that one. And that one. And then the palm of the hand to the palm bone. So now we can test this hand and see if it's functional. So, yep, we can move the hand. We can bring the thumb out. We can rotate the tip of the thumb. We can move the fingers. And pretty much produce any kind of hand gesture from this side view that we want. And eventually we will make it where we can rotate the hand as well and rotate those fingers into all kinds of neat shapes and positions like they should. And looks like I missed the tip of the finger on that one. I got the fingernail but not the tip. So it's good to test every one of these as you go. So if you miss something, so we missed the pinky tip of the finger. So the distal, and we want to assign that by layer to this bone. Okay, so I'm apparently assigned it to the wrong bone. So now we're going to do the other arm. So we go to the forearm patch, and we're going to attach it to this bone. The biceps to the same bone. The forearm to this bone. And then the thumb tip, base, and so on. And yeah, this is a lot of work. But in the end, we get much more flexibility at animation, and that's where the real work begins, is when we start animating our characters. The more we can get accomplished ahead of time before we go into animating, the better. So yeah, these bones are a pain to create and to assign like this, but when we're done, the effects that we can get are so much better. And finally the palm. And then we test everything to make sure we didn't miss something. So the whole hand is moving, thumb's moving, moves the fingertip, make sure the fingernail comes with it. Missed this one. Okay, so the ring finger this time on the distal. So we need to assign that to that bone. And there we go. So now we can test everything again. Now it's proper. I mean, it doesn't look like proper finger movement, but you know, we're able to do what we need to do with our hands here. So now we can manipulate the hand to do what we want. So let's move to the next part, which is the legs. So we've got our shoe, and we want that to be bound to this bone, our shin to this bone, and we can see those are not the proper shape or sizes there, so we're going to need to correct that. And then finally the shoe needs to be bound to that one. So now we can test all of those. We can see that we're not moving in the right places, but everything is moving. So now we need to do the pelvis, and the pelvis needs to be done to each hip, so we got to do it by point and bone. So we choose B for bone, and we choose I, and we're just going to grab all of these points here and bind those to that bone. Then we're going to go B for bone, grab this bone, choose I, choose all the other side. There we go, and bind those points. And I think I'll just make this B bone here, and I, and this center point here will bind to the center bone. That way, as the legs move and we do things like that, yeah. Now I need to rearrange all these bones and positions because we want to rotate where the center of the circles are, and that's obviously not happening on the hips here. But let's check our arms. So the arms look good. The wrist, that's acceptable. Same over here. The arm, the sleeve, the shoulders, the hair, the head, the eyebrows. Alright, so now let's go down here, and we're going to go to the bone layer. very large character now. So these bones are in the wrong place for the pelvis, because, well, the pelvis is in the right place, but these bones should be rotating in the center of the upper of the thigh here. So let's take a look at each thigh. I'm going to close things down here to make it easier. I just close the leg. I don't want to close the leg, but I want to close the arm and this head. So now we can get to this quicker. So now we want to look at the thigh, and I'm pretty close by accident there, but let's go ahead and draw a perfect circle. And we want a white color. We'll use the sclera. And holding shift, we're going to draw a circle. Make it the right size. Hit T. Centered in the rotational. And there's where our center should be. Holding Alt, we can shrink our circle to a tiny point. And now we can move to the bone layer and move that bone into the right position. Whoops. I'm having trouble getting that exact point. There. Close enough. And now we need to do the lower part of the shin, or the thigh there. So let's grab that point, G, and then T, and now we're going to move it down here. Let's expand it using Alt so it stays a perfect circle. You got to match the size of the knee here. Put it in place, a little bigger. Definitely want to be correct on the overlap. Otherwise your center will not be correct. So now we shrink this down. That's the point we're looking for. And go back to the bone layer. And our point disappeared. Oh, shin. There we go. So now we can shrink this to our tiny point. Go to the bone layer. Transform the bone. Point to that point. And then bring the other bone into that point as well. Now we can get rid of the little point we need there. Grab, Control X. Now we put the shin back and Control V, Alt, make it large, bring it down to the ankle, hide the shoe, and so we can bring this to the right point. Alt, stretch that to the same size, get it in the right place, and shrink it up. Then, why am I not seeing it now? Well, there it is. So now I can transform my bone. Got to be in the bone layer, and bring it to that point, and then put the other bone to the foot, connecting there. Okay, so now I can turn my shin on and the shoe, and let's test everything before we move to the other side. So Might want to do something with that shoe. That doesn't. That might work actually, but I think the shoes need to come down a little. I think they're just not far enough down the foot. So let's hold shift. Maybe right where the top of the shoe is. So right where the laces tie. Let's try that. That is better. That looks more natural. And the knee looks like it's working decently. You see a little bit of the edge being disappeared, but otherwise we've got everything we need. And the hip seems to be working good. A little bit off on that, but let's see here. No, that's pretty good. All right. Now we're going to do the other leg. So we're going to go to the thigh for the other side. Did we delete our circle? No, we did not. So we go to the shoe or the... No, it was a shin. So... and G to grab. I guess it's in the shoe. No. Oh, it's still in the thigh. Alright, delete. So now we're going to go over to the other thigh and we're going to draw a perfect circle. And sclera will work. And holding shift, make it the right size, hit T, move it into place. The more accurate we are here, the better our look at the final product. And now we're going to go to the bone layer and move the bone, transform it to the new location. That's pretty close. Now we pick up that point. Move it to the other end, turn off the shin, enlarge until we are the right size, and then match the circle, then Alt, shrink it to a point, and now we can go to the bone layer, and we move the bone into the right size and shape. And go back to the thigh. Use G to grab the point, Control X, turn on the shin, click into the shin, Control V, use Alt, expand till we're the right size. Hit T, move the circle into proper position. Use Alt, shrink it down. Use the bone layer and transform the bone to the center of that point. Then we pick up the other bone, move it into place, hide the shoe, use G to grab, then T, then Alt, and stretch it out, bring it down to where we need it. Make it the right size using Alt, keeping the perfect circle, and move it into place. Then go to the bone layer, grab the bone, and move it into place. Oh, I didn't shrink my circle. That would help. Because we want to go right there. And now we can put that bone right where it belongs, and then this one where it belongs. And now we can turn the shoe back on, and we can test it. There we go. So once we're able to turn the shoe so that it turns sideways, this will all be really wonderful. Alright, so now we need to make sure that our hands are functional. So let's check each finger here. See how well it rotates. See, now that's not rotating on this circle. So we need to go in and correct that. That one's pretty good. Alright, so most of them are alright on the first joint. Second joint looks fine. So just this one is wrong, the pinky finger. So we're going to go into the bone layer and transform bone. And I can actually see it here that that pinky does not go to the center of the joint there. So now we pull that up, and then this one's got to come back down to where that one is there. So also I hid the bottom of the, or the top of each of these joints and the bottom of each joint. I think I should only be hiding the bottom of each joint on those hands there. So let's go in on the hands. This is the left hand, right? No, this is the right hand. So we're going to go to the right hand. And on each of the finger joints, I'm going to unhide this, the top line. So in the distals I don't need to do anything, but here I want to unhide those two lines. Now let's turn off the distals so I can be sure. Yeah. Alright, so if we turn off the forefinger, now move to the proximal and turn these back on, then I think that gives us a better look when we're manipulating the fingers. See, this leaves a gap with no border, where this doesn't. We now have that border. So that's what we're going to do on each of these fingers. We're going to go to the distals, or not the distals, the mids and the proxies. And we're just going to unhide these two lines here and these two lines here. So there we go. Now we've got what we want on there, on that thumb. Alright, so now we're going to go to the proximal for the forefinger. And we're going to make sure that that's rotating as it should. That looks fine to me. So the next point, we need a perfect circle, sclera. Let's go with new and circle. And we'll make the border transparent light black and one width. So now draw a circle inside the proximal forefinger. Alright, so we make circle, hit T, put it in place. And shrink it. Go to the bone layer. Yes, this is a lot of work, and this video turned into a lot longer video than I expected. So we get that to that point. Move the other bone onto that point. Then we can go back to the layer, grab that circle, Control X, and bring on the mid finger part. Go into the mid finger, Control V, Alt to enlarge the circle. Move it to the other end of the finger. Make sure it's the right shape and size and that it fits in the fingertip as it should. Now we can move the bone to where it belongs. Use Alt to shrink to a tiny point. Move the bone into place. Get the other bone in place and show the next tip. And that should do it. We shouldn't need to adjust anything further on that finger. So we'll test it. And there we go. We've got a good working finger. Alright, so we move to the next finger. And we got to do the proximal part first. We need to draw a circle. Get it properly centered, shrink it, go to the bone layer, and get it set. Get the next bone set. Grab this ring, delete it, turn on the next part of the finger, go to the next part of the finger, paste the circle, expand it, put it in place, shrink it down, Then go to the bone layer. And this is the way we're going to continue to finish the hands and the bone rigging for this character. So I'm going to end the video here and let you guys move on to other things. But I will continue to correct each bone until it's perfectly aligned so that we can get our rotation. Please visit dangeraware.org. We can use the help. If you are an animator, you want to create a small video highlighting something about abuse awareness, then please do so. We would love to get anybody helping us do what we're doing. If you'd like to make suggestions on how we can make things better for our website to help educate the young and vulnerable about abuse awareness, please let us know. And of course, we can always accept funding. And we added a new product. I learned about Teespring this week. So if we go to the Dangerware website, oops, here, we'll go to Dangerware. You can see we now have merchandise. So you can click on this here, and this will take you to Teespring, where we're able to create products and get them delivered on demand. So here's a notebook we've come up with. It's the Respect My Personal Space notebook, and the back of it just looks like this. So just our little astronauts indicating personal space. You know, they're in a suit, nobody can touch them if they don't want to be. And they're $20. They're a little expensive, but every penny goes to changing the paradigm of abuse awareness. And we have some shirts, sweatshirts, t-shirts, kids shirts, yeah, all of them right here as well, with our Respect My Personal Space emblem on them on the front, and on the back just 3 of our astronauts. So they're not all identical, they're a little bit different here and there. So if you're interested, please help support us by buying some of our merchandise. And you can change the colors of the shirts here. You know, just choose whichever color you like. And they all look great with the Respect My Personal Space. So thank you for watching again. You have a wonderful day, and we appreciate you watching, and please help Dangerware change the paradigm of abuse awareness. This has been the Super Aware Kid, Part 4. Next section, I will finish out the look of the character once all the rigging is done. You have a wonderful day, and thanks again for watching.